Hello there, and welcome to our presentation on REIS Cyber Risk Management. This is a group assignment including Chloe, myself, Peter, and Nigel. We have all worked together to create this PowerPoint for cyber risk management for REIS. Who is REIS and what do they do? So, who is REIS? The business began in 1990, and as you can tell already, the company is very old. The company has been around for many years and therefore has grown as large as it has today. The original founder was Harold Joseph Rees. However, today's CEO's name is Peter Wilson. Their primary business is providing products to plumbers as a wholesaler. However, they do have many other branches that they work towards in the retail industry and provide excellent stability for plumbing business owners and career trades in the same value. This assignment then brings us to risk management. Now, what is risk management? Risk management is increasingly important to business drivers and shareholders that have become more concerned about risk these days. An example of risk could potentially be management, owners, or also other shareholders who invest their time and interest in a future event or near future event that could potentially harm or do anything in a bad view to the business. Risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So if a company is to go forth and achieve certain goals that they have trying to get to for many years, when they finally get there, they may see some risk. The risk that we will be touching on mainly today is technological risk and cyber risk. This is a major issue for modern day businesses because technology is such a large part in what everybody does in modern society.
In 21st century businesses, it is not uncommon to find diverse teams of internal auditors, enterprise risk management specialists, compliance officers, internal control specialists, quality inspectors, fraud investigators, and other risk and control professionals working together to help their organisations manage risk. Each of these specialties has a unique perspective and specific skills that can be invaluable to the organisations they serve. But because duties related to risk management and control are increasingly being split across multiple departments and divisions, duties must be coordinated carefully to assure that risk and control processes operate as intended. The diagram shown on this slide shows three lines of defence. Management control is the first line of defence in risk management. Various risk control and compliance oversight functions established by management are considered to be the second line of defence. The third line of defence is independent assurance provided by the internal audit function, for example. The risk management process as a basis for first line defence. It is important that an organisation has group instructions on risk management, how it defines roles and responsibilities, as well as the main components of the risk management process, which are risk assessment, risk response, and continuous monitoring. Additionally, supporting first line defence, there should be an established framework to enable systematic work with compliance issues. The compliance framework, as a guide, should consist of 8 elements that are founded on a sound and clear tone from the top. It is designed to adhere to internal standards and is based on prevent, detect, and investigate principles. COSO ERM provides one such framework, originally developed in 2004 with a recently revised 2017 edition. ISO 3100-2009 is another enterprise risk management framework, originally an Australian New Zealand standard. AS/NZ 4360.
What is cyber risk management? Cyber risk management refers to any risk or financial loss, disruption, or damage to the reputation of an organization for some sort of failure of its information system. Now, this typically direct at logical information systems. An example of this is a security breach. So hackers who try and collect credit card details or information from business customers. Reese have a large technological system, and this is to track, to order, supply, and direct their stock.
Enterprise risk is controlled by the financial department by a 30-year-old veteran of the business. This officer is responsible for privacy, financial risk, and business continuity, and reports to the current CFO. In fact, this delegate was also the previous CFO before getting close to retirement age. At Reese, they have the motto, "It's not what you make, it's what you keep." This is at the heart of their financial risk strategies, and they have historically made less strategic acquisitions, opportunities, and had a low risk tolerance and appetite. They plan their activities around being recession-proof and long-term ROI rather than short-term investments. They meet quarterly with the executive teams and senior leadership to present new ideas, and they have a strong focus now on diversification, looking at buying retail businesses outside of the plumbing organisations, and also territory expansion, that is, plumbing organisations in markets outside of Australia. Measuring cyber risk is difficult at Reese as it's a bit of a platypus business. It's not a financial institution, however, one of their unique propositions is providing large debt and debit to the trade community. They're not a traditional retailer, but they do sell online and into stores to that trade community. So measuring risk is looking at retail industry stats from researchers like Gardner and providing a benchmark for costs associated with breaches and incident handling. The strongest metric for cyber risk is availability. Disruption to the point of sale systems can be quantified, both in terms of time and trended sales data. And while it's less than 2% of the overall business revenue, online that is, a cyber risk disruption would cost $200,000 per day, while the cost to the business through bricks and mortar sales would be $7 million. Cyber risks at Reese are typically divided into technology-based risk and people-based risks, which are both forms of operational risk. Data taken out of the organisation could be used or sold to competitors, like price list data, and corrupting that data could also have a widespread impact in operations. Reese is strongly connected to its brand, so an online security breach would be more of a reputational brand risk concern than it would actually be to an immediate online losses. And lastly, there's already been a significant increase in attempts to extort money from the financial and accounts payable department as well as the C-level executives. There are 6 incident response run sheets attached to identified risks, and these are data exfiltration, distributed denial of service, malware attack like viruses, phishing campaigns, website defacement, and ransomware. Of these, the ones that would have the most likely chance of occurrence and the largest chance of disruption are ransomware and website defacement. Before we go into some examples of those threats just talked about, it's important to contextualise with how security was formed at Reese. It was not a central focus until 2014 when cyber risk became an executive and board focus. But they were wary of bringing in an external person who had very black and white views of risk, and so they were seeking someone who could contextualise and balance risk with opportunity. So they selected an infrastructure manager who had broad business appeal and popularity and paired him with a subject matter expert in cybersecurity and risk. So since then, it has made broad strides, including a first launch of the security strategy, a security program aimed at better risk identification, assessment and mitigation, and in 2016 there was a move to align practices to NIST cybersecurity framework and ISO 27001. Lastly, it was also a solidification of cyber risk being at the forefront of the board and executive minds, and that being by reconciling cyber risk with the enterprise risk registry. There's still gaps that impact the company's ability to mitigate risk, such as the team is still new in the cybersecurity area and people aren't experienced. There's a lack of processes and documentation, and a history of previous risks are not present. There's a lack of awareness across the organisation, as evidenced by a high rate of falling for a recent corporate phishing campaign. And there's no current risks identified against the strong adoption of cloud-based systems, such as the file collaboration SaaS platforms. Lastly, there's a lack of visibility into the levels of access that IT staff have, such as people that have been with the organisation for a long time and have gathered lots of administrative credentials. To combat some of these gaps, Reece has taken to revitalising its security awareness campaign to all staff. It rebooted an awareness campaign with quarterly e-learning updates and has been doing countrywide presentations on cyber risk. An introduction of an enterprise-grade identity and access management program has aimed at addressing the access creep issues, as well as other technologies, security cloud technologies aimed at dealing with the cloud adoption issues. There's also a full defense in-depth program implemented for end-to-end security controls, and while previously there was unstructured direction on security efforts, there's been a best practice adoption for the industry so that metrics and improvements can be more visible. One of the threats mentioned earlier is ransomware. By looking at its prevalence across the globe using reports and media and threat intelligence from security companies, we can get some focus on the ransomware and how it's trending. By checking the web and email gateways, you can also look at known ransomware and whether that's also on the rise. In terms of unknown ransomware, however, that is still a risk, and that is best met by anomaly detection and behavioral technologies that are equipped to determine sudden suspicious ransomware-like behavior. Security awareness is still very vital, as predominantly ransomware is launched when an unwitting employee clicks and executes it thinking it is genuine content. And it is integrated into ERM by being present in the risk registry and by integrating this training into an overall enterprise risk training modules. The second scenario is website defacement. As previously mentioned, it's relative to a $200,000 per day loss of business, but the reputation loss is harder to quantify. It could be made more relative to the fact that the plumbing user profile is changing as a new generation of plumbers are moving to more online purchasing and mobile use rather than store visits. To mitigate this risk, continuous monitoring is in place, as well as regular security testing and upgraded firewalling. Similar to the ransomware example, by putting these things in place, there are other cyber risks that are protected by these strategies. And lastly, these measures can cause user experience issues or restrictions on features, and so there's potential for an impact to positive customer experience. The recommendations at Reece are as follows. There needs to be a formal documentation or uplift of the way that enterprise risk management is conveyed to various functions within the business. The NIST cybersecurity framework adoption needs to continue, as it is a big part of balancing a set of controls aimed at improved cyclical risk identification and balancing it with the needs for risk mitigation controls aimed at response and recovery. Reece needs to consider a broader risk management committee that could be chaired still by the current privacy and risk officer, but include representation from outside of financial risk, including the development of owners of other forms of risk, which may include, but not limited to, cyber risk. With the focus on NIST and ISO 27001, risk could be further supplemented by intellectual and terminology advancement through adopting ISO 31000 and COSO Enterprise Risk Management Framework. This is not a huge stretch considering the huge investment in an already digital transformation strategy. And lastly, with a big focus on activity-based working and quarterly objectives key results to drive deliverables and professional development, enterprise risk could be included to provide an opportunity for wider awareness around risks, risk tolerance and appetite, as well as the ERM culture and processes. Chloe, Peter and Nigel wish to thank you for watching this video synopsis.